I've seen firsthand how, yeah, our system has failed us. I'm able to step into Tallahassee and say, these things are not working. This is the reformation that we need. If I'm put to the fire, then so be it, because our next governor needs to have a backbone and be able to stand up for all 23.7 million of us.
This is Black Girls Politickin. I'm Michaela, and today I am here with Florida gubernatorial candidate Dayna Foster. Dayna, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So, for individuals who may not know you, they may not be familiar with you, the race you're running, can you tell them a little bit about yourself?
Yes. So the headline is Teacher Runs for Governor, right? But I have been a lifelong public servant since I was 19. My experience with politics is just in a different font, but it's still applicable experience. And I like to say that I've dealt with public policy as an end result or a finished product. And so basically, what that means is I started off in public libraries here in Broward at the African American Research Library and Cultural Center. And public libraries are a social good. And what we do is we kind of fill the voids and the gaps that government often leaves behind. So, for example, with our seniors, when they would come in, we had services like computer literacy classes or internet literacy classes. Sometimes we had to help constituents with navigating through the application of applying for Medicare. We also had opportunities for small business owners, our veterans, when they would come back from being deployed, offering hotspots to them so that they had internet access. So, again, they're connected to whatever resources they might need, even down to our youth with SAT and ACT prep, homework help. Just ultimately, like I said, just filling those gaps. And about almost 10 years after being in public libraries, I shifted into becoming an educator at my alma mater of Fort Lauderdale High School, which is also here in Broward. And I went back as a math teacher. And I would say that education is not as simple as people think it is. Everyone says, okay, teachers get 2.5 month summer vacations, they come back, they lesson plan, they teach the kids, they go home. And no, it's so much more than that, right? When you think about teachers like myself, where I teach the lowest quartile students in the school as it relates to math, math is not their first, second, third, or fourth language, right? Oftentimes, some of these students have behavioral issues, and then also, too, their parents and their families might come from a different socioeconomic background. So there's a lot that you're kind of exposed to that you see, not so much directly being in their home, but through the eyes of the students. So, for example, I've had high school students come in and say, Miss Foster, I'm really sorry I didn't get to finish my homework because I actually had to work. And I have to work because my mom's the only one working, and I have three siblings, and I work to contribute to the household. Right. And that just kind of shows how there's a lapse in even just having some resources for that gap, right? In terms of the single parent that has, multiple children, and they're the only one in the home to kind of hold it down. So they have to rely on their children when they do come of age to work. Even down to this year specifically, we saw students not showing up to school because these were our students that came from immigrant families, and their families were afraid to bring the students to school or even send them to school because they didn't know if they were going to get picked up by ICE. And
Wow.
everyone knows how Florida willingly signed into the 287G agreements with the federal administration. Um, Even down to the governmental shutdown that took place. And I say this a lot in multiple interviews, but it's important to vocalize that this had happened. Where I had a student in my classroom and he asked me if they cut my food stamps off as well. And I was like, well, no, honey, I don't get those. But he was like, oh, okay. And the whole class kind of started laughing, and I saw his face get small. But in that moment, I realized that I had kids in my immediate vicinity of my classroom that were being affected from the shutdown because, as I said to him, is your family okay? And he was like, no, we're good. We kind of budget and everything like that. And I said, okay. But we were at Thanksgiving time.
Yeah.
And so it made my eyes open even more to see how you had like food pantries scrambling, trying to, again, fill that void that the government had left because we had a governor who had the financial tools to take money that was on reserve and allocate it through an emergency order to say that, okay, we won't let these families go hungry, like not even as a thought. And he didn't. He did nothing, even when legislators actually called on him to take action. So, with having that experience and that background and seeing what's happening or the lack thereof, in 2024, I saw that we lost the presidential election. It made me look to Florida to see, okay, what are we doing on the home front? Midterms are coming up in 2026. And when I saw that the only person running was David Jolly, a former Republican, I was like, well, hold on, pause. And I waited a couple months just to see, okay, well, who else from our Democratic Party that our leaders within the party are going to step up
Mhm.
and challenge this man because he was already at that point pretty much assuming that he was the presumptive nominee, even down to having local governmental officials here in my backyard of Broward County endorsing him. And it's like, hold on, like we haven't even given other people an opportunity to enter the race. So, as my brother would say, the tomfoolery of it all, once I saw that was happening, I said, no, I might just be a teacher, but I know that democracy is a representative process. I know that in order to run for governor, you must be a resident of Florida for 7 years and older than 30. I check off both of those boxes. And I said, why not? Why not me? Why not any one of us? And so I entered the race, and overwhelmingly, we've gotten so much support from social media that when I'm able to go into the communities and do community outreach and meet the people and hear their stories, whether it's of struggle or triumph, they all say, wow,
Yeah.
this is so refreshing to see a candidate like yourself that's number one, an actual human being. Number two, that understands what we're going through in terms of our everyday struggles. And number three, that actually wants to like fight for us genuinely, right? So we call it kind of this real world experience that I would be able to bring to the governor's office in Tallahassee. But really, it's just a matter of being able to take one of our own and place them in the legislature so that they can see exactly what's happening. It is the highest, I think, form of oversight and transparency that we, the people, can get by having one of our own be our next governor.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one thing you kind of discuss is this idea of just being a teacher, right? But
Mhm.
realistically, teachers deal with a lot of the things that you'd have to deal with as governor, right? Like you
Yeah.
have to manage personalities, you have to have these, these information sessions. You have to really
Hmm.
talk to constituents, right? And as a teacher, and I'm a communications professional, but as a teacher, you have to also learn how to translate really, high language, maybe it's worksheets or whatever the case may be into a
Yeah.
way in which your students understand. And that's something
Hmm.
that you'd also have to do as, as governor. So my question for you is what are some of the tools and things that you've learned as a teacher that you think will translate well to this race?
A big part of, I think, leadership is having those that you oversee know that you care, know that you are trustworthy, and know that you are transparent. And what I mean by that is with my students, number one, they always know that Miss Foster is always going to be there for them, no matter what. And it's because whenever they call on me, I am always there for them. Whether it's because they don't understand a question, maybe it's because maybe they failed a test and they want to know, okay, how can I do better so I can be better performing on the next test? Even if it's something as simple as Miss Foster, what should I do in terms of preparing for college? Or, what path should I go down? What are the necessary steps? I don't understand this language. Maybe they have friend issues in their social groups, right? Just whatever it is. I'm always there for my kids. And I call them my kids because they would never let me not say that, right? They're like, Miss Foster, you got so many kids. I'm like, "Mm, yeah, I do." And so having that person that you can depend on, right? That is something that Florida would be able to have. We would be able to have a governor that number one we could depend on. then I always talk about this level of protection that I have for my students. And they all know that no matter what, whether it be an active shooter, whether it even be ICE themselves, there is nobody that's coming in my classroom and going to bring any type of harm to my kids. That same level of fight and protection is something that we also need in our next governor. And I would bring that same type of energy, as my kids would say, to the governor's office. And also, as I mentioned before, just having that know-how, right, of being able to read something, understand it, and then put it in a more simple, like framing. So,
Absolutely.
because I am a math teacher with Algebra 1 and Algebra 2, a lot of the times the kids will be like, oh, Miss Foster, like, do not use that fancy language. And I'm like, I get it. I have to teach it to you like this. But then when we're working together, I can break it down for you so that you can understand. And right now, what needs to happen is that same type of energy being brought to Tallahassee, where it's, listen, these policies are not working for everyday people. And to an extent, you might say that the legislatures, the legislators, they know that within the legislature of, okay, yeah, we know it's hard for everyday working people because it's really about the haves and the have-nots, right? That's what we're really battling. All of these other things are to distract us from the ultimate goal, which is for the ultra wealthy to stay up here and for we everyday people to stay down here. Um, but bringing that level of just, again, being able to put things in a more simple way and also kind of fostering that bipartisan effort. But again, like I said, I'm always going to make sure I'm fighting for the people. So that doesn't mean that I'll bend over backwards
Yeah.
and put us in a compromising position. It's more of just having that know-how of, okay, let's work together. But then when it gets to that point where it's not working anymore, then it's okay, well, thank you for your time. Now let me go what I need to do so that I'm showing up for the people. So
Absolutely.
that's kind of the energy that I would be bringing and the experience and some of the qualities and traits from being a teacher to also being governor of this state. Because one thing that's really big is we see right now with the federal administration and even at the state level, the dismantling of not just public education, but public libraries as well.
Mhm.
And the reason for that is because whether you're a library professional or an education professional, we are the individuals that house and preserve information, and then we also facilitate the distribution of it. And because knowledge is power, an informed populace is a powerful one, what they are doing is they're going directly at the root and at the sources of where that information comes from, right? Because what they're trying to do is take away our power. So, it kind of even just lays down the foundation for the
Yeah.
case of the best person in this space and age is to have a teacher as our next governor, because as I say all the time, and this comes from the book that Randy Weingarten of the AFT wrote, fascists fear teachers.
Yeah.
And right now we need to have someone that the fascist president absolutely will fear because we are in a new space where governors are now, yes, that first line of defense against the federal administration because of who is currently in office. We don't get to do things as status quo anymore. We have to do something different.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's so good. I think, obviously I live in the state of Texas, so we've seen very
Mhm.
similar things take place where our
Oh,
governor has not been,
yes.
our protector has not stood up. So I love to hear that not only do you recognize that, but you have plans for that. And so with
Mhm.
that being said, I'd love to shift to policy. I love your policy
Mhm.
platform. You have some
Thank
very
you.
progressive policies as well. But one thing that you mentioned, and again, it's happening here in Texas, is a housing crisis, right? And so
Mhm.
Florida's housing crisis is central to your platform.
Mhm.
What is one specific tenant protection or home ownership policy that you
Mhm.
want to push through the legislature and why?
Mhm. So I'm going to answer it two ways.
Mhm.
The first thing that I would say is very, very specific, and this comes from a legislation standpoint, is making sure that we are repealing the state ban that's currently in place for rent control.
Mhm.
I remember being at an event in Palm Beach County, and there was a panel, and they were talking about how Palm Beach County couldn't even do what they needed to for the constituents of that county because of this rent control ban that's in place because it's statewide. And so ultimately, who does it protect? It protects the landlords and, the developers instead of actual the renters, right? Because right now, yeah, no, we can't even put caps on at a local level on the rent that is continuously rising and that is contributing to the affordability crisis that we're in. And so I understand that, for example, fiscal policy is set by the Fed, that's an entity of the federal government. And the Fed stands for Federal Reserve. But as a state, what we can do is mitigate some of these issues, right? And so if local government has that ability to exercise home rule and say, you know what, we're going to put a cap on one bedroom apartments at 1700. I'm just throwing out a number. Even then that's too expensive, but just throwing that out, at least that is there and they are able to look out for their constituents and yes, provide a layer of protection for them. But when you have a state that's saying, nope, it doesn't matter across the board, we're not going to let local government exercise home rule, that's actually causing harm. And again, I take it very seriously when I say that I will be a governor that will fight for Floridians and also protect them. So that's one answer on one end, but a part of our housing strategy that we have to kind of mitigate the affordability crisis is that we want to ensure through our state budget that we have this Sadowski Trust Fund always appropriated. And so basically that's just the money that is used to build affordable housing. So local government, they get funds allocated to them from the state. A part of that fund is revenue for affordable housing. Um, and what we want to do is we want to work to foster the construction of housing that is affordable within transit hub areas. So that means mid-rises and high-rises that have income restrictions, right? That are realistic. So not capping it off at 40,000 a year, making it higher. Because again, for example, someone that even makes 50 or 60,000 a year here in Florida, they're still struggling,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So especially in South Florida, things are very, very expensive. So, but it's just across the board that, inflation is so, so real. Um, and with that, we are being environmentally conscious because we're not stepping on the toes of any environmental protections. We're not having to rezone anything. The land is already designated for that type of construction. So we can just kind of go ahead and make sure that we're not overstepping because environmental protections is something that is important to us. And then you're bridging constituents to being in a walkable neighborhood. So they have access to transportation. Healthcare should be in the vicinity, same thing with a grocery store and other resources as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think all of that, I think for anyone, right, these are the things that people want and need just to live a good
Hmm.
life, right?
Yeah.
So again, I think realistically, and to me sometimes, and I say this a lot, but it sounds like common sense policy, right? Like, wouldn't you
Oh, yes.
want
Yeah.
your constituents to have the opportunity to live in a space where they can thrive? And it's just so
Hmm.
interesting when you see leaders, especially state leaders, like you said, they often do serve, especially in this day and age, as the first line of defense. And we do
Hmm.
have a lot of state leaders, especially governors, who
Yeah.
have, in these past, 600 plus days, capitulated over and over and over to this administration, leaving their
Hmm.
constituents vulnerable, right? And so I think those
Absolutely.
are things that a lot of people just don't understand, and they don't really understand how they impact their day-to-day lives until it's something
Hmm.
that's like glaring, like house, like, home ownership, or like having somewhere
Hmm.
to live, right? And so realistically, still thinking about, policy, you support Medicaid expansion, especially considering that Florida has resisted it over
Hmm.
for over a decade, right? Like for
Yeah.
over a decade. And again, the same thing has happened in Texas. We do not have Medicaid expansion because we have
Hmm.
had a governor that has said no to it time and time again.
Hmm.
What do you think makes this like a political challenge? And
hmm
how do you see yourself actually making it happen for the people that need it most?
In terms of it being a challenge, I think what it is that Republicans are so fixated with their bottom line and
Mm,
ensuring, and bottom line is just like that final total line on, a financial document and making sure that everything balances out. And from someone who comes from a financial background, I understand the urgency and the need to be fiscally responsible. That's the type of governor that I will be. In conjunction with that, it's also important to make sure that you're looking out for your constituents.
mm,
So that empathy, I believe, is what's missing. I say all the time that we're in a humanitarian crisis across the entire world. We do not have a high regard for human life the way that we should. And so my intentions to ensure that we actually expand the parameters for Florida Medicaid is number one, we have a petition that is currently being distributed. As long as we get enough signatures, it'll be on everyone's general election ballot.
mm.
And so it is slated to reach that and be on everyone's ballot. I haven't checked on it as of recently, so I do apologize. But in my mind, I'm like, it's going to make it. So and as long as it gets to the general election ballot, we will continue ensuring that we advocate for it, for constituents to vote yes on that amendment, so that once it reaches my desk as governor, I would be able to sign that. And then essentially it would be into law where those parameters have been expanded. And then we would be opening access to affordable health care for millions of constituents across this entire state. If that does not take place, then I'm fully prepared to take executive action.
Absolutely. Okay, executive action. I love it. No, I mean, I think again, like people need a fighter. People need someone that's gonna
Mhm.
stand up and not only protect them because it's the right thing to do, because apparently
Right.
people keep forgetting about that part because it's the right thing to do, but also
hmm
protect them because it's the job, right? The job is to protect
Correct.
those who you serve. So I'm glad to hear you
Right.
say that. Now, one thing that has been a buzzword, a hot topic is APAC. And you have said
Yeah.
multiple times that you will not accept APAC funding. Can
hmm
you talk about what it looks like to build a grassroots only campaign, especially in
hmm
a state where money usually dominates in races like this?
Absolutely. And right now, like behind the scenes, I'm like literally in these conversations and fighting and advocating for Foster for Florida and the people because this is my thing. We can't say that we want to keep money out of politics, but then use money in politics as the North Star of the viability of a campaign. Like, make it make sense. So,
Mhm.
as the kids would say, the math ain't mathin'.
Math
It's
ain't math.
not right. It's not adding up at all, point blank, period.
Absolutely.
And so we are outspent compared to my direct primary opponent, which is David Jolly. Even though there are other people in the race, him and I are more at the head. And so, with that being said, the reason why we don't accept APAC, donations or even corporate PAC or just any foreign special interest group is because we're making a point in a statement that the power of democracy will always lie within the hands of the people and their votes.
Love that.
And so, right now, for example, you have people that think that our campaign is, uh, uh, what's the word? Our campaign, I'll put it to you like this. People cannot believe that our campaign has supporters that are actually like on fire for what we
Mhm.
stand for. And they think that it has to be bought or
Mhm.
computer generated. No, these are real people, constituents that
Mhm.
are like, ignite the blue flame,
I
spread the
love
blue
that.
flame, foster for Florida. Let's get it. We want bold leadership. We want a grassroots candidate. We want a real person. We want a human being. We want one of our own that
Yeah.
is of the everyday working class. Like, we are creating something that no matter what the outcome is of the primary, Floridian politics will never be the same. This is just the beginning. And so, because people are seeing across this entire state that Foster for Florida has made it this far, right? We started where it was just me. And literally, I'm in my kitchen signing my paperwork on my kitchen counter on July 31st of 2025. Now here we are, literally an entire year later, and I'm sitting here doing this podcast with you. We're like having conversations with candidates and elected officials, and you know, we have an entire campaign manager, like, and we have thousands of people on our socials that support us, and even more people that have already said, we've sent in our vote by mail ballots, we voted for
Yeah.
you. And so we've come so far. But again, it's because of the people. So there's a whole point that I had to prove, that I wanted to prove, not just to the establishment, but to the people as well.
Yeah.
Because I wanted us to have that hope again. I wanted us to have that confidence in ourselves again, kind of like how I am with my students, is making sure that they believe in themselves, because once they feel good and they're solid, then they're able to perform properly on their homework or classwork or a test. And in this moment, if we are good as a state and as constituents, then we are going to feel emboldened and empowered to say, you know what, I'm going to get off this couch, and it's early voting today in Miami-Dade, and I'm going to go out and I'm going to vote for Dayna Marie Foster because I have a point to prove. And I want to remind the entire establishment that they answer to us. They answer to we the people. So I would say it's been a hard, long journey, a lot of work in terms of just, for example, you reach out to newspapers and they don't want to write anything on you. You reach out to certain entities on social media and you stay in their request folders. You meet elected officials and they're like, wow, good for you,
Yeah.
good for you. And I don't like that when someone says good for you because it's very condescending. Certain someone has said that to me before. And so with that being said, you know, but I have this spirit that is um will always persevere. And my mom raised me to be a woman where just because you approach an obstacle or maybe you trip and fall, it doesn't mean that you stop. You get back up and you keep trying, and you push forward. And that's exactly what we have done as a campaign, is that no matter what, we've been resilient and we've pushed forward. And I truly believe that it shows. A lot of our socials show that we have like so many people that watch our content.
Yeah.
I think what they're just waiting for is, and I don't know what that moment is, but it's like one magic moment for them to be like, okay, that's it.
Yeah.
We fully trust her. But we're circulating, and I'm starting to hear, which it disappoints me a little bit that people are closeted about it within the establishment specifically. But there are a lot of people in our state that support myself as being the Democratic nominee to become the next governor of this state. And so now I'm trying to get everyone to be a little bit more out loud
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah.
So be loud and be proud, and.
Yes, I love that. I love that. So you mentioned it earlier, but I want to play a quick game with you called
Okay.
Mathin' or Ain't Mathin'. Okay. So it's gonna be super quick. It's like our little lightning round before we close. So
Okay.
the first question, raising the minimum wage will bankrupt small businesses. Is the mathin' or is it not mathin'?
It's not mathing.
Not
Come
mathin',
on
period.
now.
You can fund Medicaid expansion without raising taxes on working families. Is the mathin' or is it not mathin'?
You said without raising taxes,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
It's mathing for
Period.
sure.
Period.
Yes.
Teacher pay in Florida currently keeps up with the cost of living. Is the mathin' or it ain't mathin'?
It ain't mathing
It
at all.
ain't.
That's like somebody taking 2 - 5 and saying, oh, yeah, that's -25. No, no,
The math
no,
ain't mathin'.
at all.
$1 from a million Floridians beats one check from a single billionaire. Is the mathin' or it ain't mathin'?
The math is mathing.
The math is mathin'. Okay, because there's people power. There's power with the people.
Correct.
So
Yes.
as we close, right? I love to ask this question.
Mhm.
It's election day. A voter is walking into the booth. They're ready. willing and able, why are they choosing Dayna Foster as the next governor of the state of Florida?
They are choosing myself, Dana Marie Foster, as the next governor because they have sat and realized that we have been in a position for over 30 years
Mm,
where Republicans in Tallahassee have worked against we the people and have worked towards stripping us of our rights and silencing our voices. And even holding our party accountable, meaning the Democratic Party as well here in Florida, there's not much that has been done on their end as well. And now comes the time where we have to ask ourselves, what are we going to do different this time? A vote for myself, Dana Marie Foster, is a vote for not just change, but an actual different path that we have not tried before.
mm,
And hopping off of this amusement park ride that is not fun, right? Where we keep doing the same thing over and over and over, expecting a different result every time. And at the end of the day, that will never happen because that's the definition of insanity. So a vote for Dana Marie Foster is a vote for change. A vote for Dana Marie Foster is a vote for taking a different path to success and victory. A vote for Dana Marie Foster is a vote for ensuring that we are taking the steps to creating a government where policies will be passed that actually match the voices of we the people. A
mm,
vote for Dana Marie Foster ensures that our democracy continues to burn bright and blue. A vote for Dana Marie Foster really means that we, as everyday working people, will finally have a seat at the table.
mm. I love that. That's so beautiful and so powerful. Can I just say before we wrap this up,
Mhm,
I am so just inspired by what you've been able to accomplish since you
mhm,
announced. And I want people to understand this. The first video I saw of you, I think was almost a year ago, and it was
mhm.
on TikTok, and I believe you were in your car and you were
With the
just
letter.
yes, and you were doing a video. And I
Mhm,
remember I think I commented, I did something, and you were like, "Yeah, you can follow me on Instagram." And I remember your Instagram maybe was at like 100 followers at the time. And to see the growth and to see how you have just ran this race, because I think electability is a question that comes up so much when it comes to women running, especially in statewide and federal, at federal
mhm,
levels. But to see how you have been able to just not only hit the ground running, but to
mhm.
build so much momentum. Like I am over here praying for a blue wave for
Thank
Florida because
you.
they really deserve, and just hearing you speak, like they deserve someone that is passionate about giving them what they deserve. And it's
Yeah,
very clear that you are the person that's passionate about doing so. So,
thank
all the
you.
best. So much
Thank
luck. Good
you.
luck to you. Thank you so much for chatting with me today. And I just look forward to seeing you win in November.